Hi guys, and welcome to my review of the HTC Desire 820. Back about half a year ago when this device was initially released, it was one of the top dogs in the higher mid-range sector. But the competition has grown strong with the Asus Zenfone 2 and the Alcatel Idol Touch 3. So where does this stand now these days? Let's go and find out in my full review, starting with the design and build quality. Quick size comparison first, here with the OnePlus One. It is quite a bit taller and actually quite a bit wider, which quite impressed me. Therefore it is a little bit thinner, but not really enough to make a difference. In terms of build quality, it's built quite solid enough, but it feels a little bit hollow and shallow. Also almost too lightweight, like there is no battery inside. Here we have the flash and the camera. Here we have the headphone jack, microphone. On the bottom we have the slightly odd placed micro USB. And here on the side, on the right side, we have the power button and volume rocker that are placed a little bit too high in my experience, because I would wish for them to be here. And even though they sound quite clicky, the tactile feedback is that feels a little bit mushy and just not right, but still okay. Like I said, once again, it is quite a big device, as you can see here, quite big bezels all around the sides, and even for a 5.5 incher it just feels huge, and it doesn't really feel premium, almost like a toy, mostly because of this plastic. That's it for now. Let's check the display here. We have a 720p 5.5 inch IPS display, and I have no issues with the resolution itself because everything still seems sharp enough, no complaints here at all. And as you can also see here, is a very bright display, so outdoor visibility was quite good. The white level here, as you can see as well, very nice, no complaints, not too warm, not too cold. The black levels could be a little bit deeper, everything seems a little bit brightened up, no details get lost, but the contrast ratio could be a bit better, and the colors, they seem a little bit undersaturated in some certain situations. Overall quite okay. If you are used to more saturated displays though, then this is maybe not the right one for you, but it is still a very nice display, but just 720p, and these days we already have competitors with 1080p displays for the same price, so let's keep that in mind and check the sound. Okay, you don't have to worry that you will ever block the speakers, because top front facing, absolutely nice, no complaints here at all. But if we see it as a boom sound speaker system, then I'm not super happy, because from boom sound I would expect a little bit more of a richer sound, a little bit more of volume, even though even the M9 doesn't have the loudest speaker. So definitely not on an Nexus 6 level, not on an M8 or M9 level. But if you compare it with pretty much everything else, like the OnePlus One, the Sony Xperia Z3, or anything with a backfiring or bottom firing speaker, this still is a great one and no complaints. It could be better, but it is definitely more than good enough. Okay, let's check the performance here with a Twitter app. As you can see here, there is a certain kind of stutter here from time to time, and it is just KitKat smooth because we only use KitKat, but still things seem slightly jaggy sometimes. As you can see here, there is a certain kind of stutter from time to time. Not 100% smooth. If you are in the browser though, things are absolutely nice. So it always depends slightly a little bit on the app as well. If you go into Google Plus, there you will see a lot of micro stutters and lags sometimes. But it is still a totally fine experience, and one thing has to be mentioned as a big advantage, and that is the multitasking behavior, because as you can see here, we have a lot of apps opened right now, and you always have a slight little blur before the app gets actually reloaded once again. But it is not like it has to reload the whole page, it is just a small little refresh. And as you can see here, the multitasking is also super nice. And one thing I wanted to show off is how extremely responsive it is. As you can see here, I don't even finish my gesture, and the app is also already there. This is absolutely nice, because if you, like me, like to switch apps very fast, then this will be great. So let's check how good the multitasking actually is. And as you can see, even the game was still in the RAM, and I was using quite a lot of apps. So let's go back into the game and see how well the performance is. I have to mention the one thing, this is using the ultra settings, not optimal. So the graphics are a little bit turned higher than they would have to be, and it still is totally playable, and all the other games I tested were totally fine. As you can see here, this is still good, therefore that I use the highest settings. Keep that in mind, usually it would even be smoother. App performance, like I said, slightly stuttery but still totally fine and smooth. Multitasking very impressive because 2 GB of RAM and no memory leak issues because we don't use Lollipop. That is fine. Browsing performance absolutely flawless, and the gaming performance was overall very nice. And you could even play with higher settings. So here, not perfectly flagship level, but still totally fine. And let's get to the software actually right now. Usually I do the battery life, but I wanted to check the software just so you can see we have 4.4.4. But I don't see this as an issue because see it as it is. Yes, it is not Lollipop smooth and you miss out on a few features, but you know, most of these budget devices don't get so many updates, and I'm not sure if this will get a proper Lollipop update, because if it won't, then you're maybe even better off with a very solid and stable experience in terms of KitKat. And I won't really go much into the software itself because I think you know KitKat from Sense already, but the one thing I have to mention is it doesn't really look a lot like stock Android. It looks quite distanced from Android, and the fact that I have to press once again to have to go to the quick settings is a little bit of a bummer. So it is a nice UI, not stock looking, and a little bit something different that I usually know. And I'm not maybe the biggest fan of Sense itself, but Sense itself did everything I wanted it to do very nice. It's just maybe a design personal preference thing that I wasn't the biggest fan, but I would have been totally fine otherwise. And like I said, KitKat Lollipop, this discussion is up for another topic. As for the battery life, 1 hour of charging gets you to 50%, and after 3 hours you are at 100%. The one little bit disappointing thing here though is, and I wanted to show off, because if I'm going to talk negative about the battery, I want to show you why. Standby drain was fine. As you can see here, 4.5 days with 1 hour of screen on time, used 64%, so standby drain is good. But the drain in the usage is just not that great. As you can see, over the course of 11 hours, 3 hours of screen on time, not really impressive. Here we have, okay, 5.5 hours, almost 6 hours of Bluetooth use. That was podcast streaming over 3G, just 2 hours of screen on time. Very disappointing. Here, no Bluetooth, 3 hours of screen on time over 16 hours. Here we have 3.5, but that was over 1 day, but with mostly Wi-Fi. Here we have not even 3 hours over 1.5 days, also on Wi-Fi. And these 4 hours are 15 hours, but that was 4 hours of YouTube streaming at a piece. So as you can already see, battery life definitely is a little bit disappointing. If you have a normal day like I usually tend to do right now, it would get me through the day. With podcast streaming, it would have been a little bit tight. But for every heavy user, this definitely will get very tight. So let's get to the camera then. Selfies, as you can see here, they are quite sharp. No problems here at all. They picture all the details, but also a lot of things like in the background, in the clouds, they get lost, because this is a general issue of this device. The overexposure is more than obvious. Things, if a white background like the clouds and so on are visible, just get overblown and everything then looks just a little bit odd. Otherwise it would have been sharp, it would have been detailed, colors look quite natural, a little bit undersaturated in my experience, but it is the overexposure that is just more than obvious, and I don't really want to get more into that. Low light experience was quite okay actually. It was a little bit more blurry, therefore not as grainy, so quite good. Video performance, smooth videos, quite sharp, movement was nice, colors again quite good, but also a little bit of flaky in terms of autofocus, because it doesn't seem like the autofocus was properly working, and once again the overexposure was more than obvious. That's it for the camera. Not a great camera, but it would have been good enough for me, but it was the overexposure that you could maybe fix in manual mode. The manual mode features, if you can once again quickly check them, they are okay, I would say, because you have auto, you have different modes, you have ISO, you have EV, that is for exposure, auto white balance, so you get a quite good manual mode, but I just don't want to use it, especially if this is a budget phone. It is mostly made for mainstream people, and they just, for example, I don't know anyone who uses manual mode. They all just take out their phone, snap a picture, and I want to have it as hassle-free as possible, and with this one, at least if you don't care about exposure, it's fine. Let's get to the recap then. Design and build quality, no real issues, but just not impressed because it is very huge, feels almost too lightweight and just big and a bit like a toy. The display is very nice, Qualities are good. It looks a little bit pale sometimes, therefore very bright and overall good, but it is just a 720p displays in times where we already have 1080p's. Not that I would have an issue with 720p. Sound on a very, very high level, but just not on the very best. It is a little bit shallow and it is a little bit just maybe not loud enough. But once again, complaining on a high level because still front facing and loud, good experience. Performance wasn't top notch. I expected a little bit more from the 615, but mostly I think because I've used so many Lollipop devices. It just wasn't near to the Lollipop smoothness, but therefore super responsive in terms of app switching. Multitasking was brilliant, gaming performance was also fine. So if you can live with a little bit more stutters, but therefore with an definitely superior multitasking experience, this still does a job just great. As for the battery life, a little bit disappointed. Maybe 3 hours in normal use. I would have definitely wished for more. Software was good. Not my personal taste. It just looked a little bit too colorful. Okay, now everyone could say it doesn't look Samsung powerful, but even Samsung these days actually looks more like stock Android. I think this is mostly still on KitKat. If this would have been used Lollipop, I haven't seen sense with Lollipop so far. And the camera would have been a nice camera, but it is far from a great camera, mostly because of the exposure. So this leads me to the end. Would I recommend it? Maybe half a year ago, no problems here at all, because it was a very solid phone. No real flaws except of the slightly weaker battery life. But these days, with the Alcatel Idol Touch 3 and the Asus Zenfone 2, for an even lower price, because they cost around 300 here, and I know in certain areas even less, and this one here costs 330. This means it is the most expensive device of, for example, just these three. No 1080p, lower camera and so on. So if you get it on a good price, maybe 200, 250, and are okay with the specs, want a good sound, even though the Alcatel seems to have a very good sound as well, then it is still a good phone. But I think in 2015, late 2015 already, you can get more for less money, or at least for the same amount of money. So what was great back about half a year ago is just about average these days. Okay, this was my review of the HTC Desire 820. Until next time, bye.